If you're a frequent PNW Haunts and Homicides listener, you probably already know we're Birdie ambassadors.
We wanted to take a quick moment to tell you a little bit more about this awesome product.
Birdie is the modern personal safety alarm made for women by women.
In a situation where you feel threatened or unsafe, you can simply activate Birdie's loud siren and flashing light to create a diversion.
Birdie is perfect to carry anytime because the device is lightweight and comes in a variety of colors.
So important. Use our ambassador link and coupon code PNW Haunts and Homicides to receive 10% off your purchase. Like our social media handles, the coupon code is all spelled out, no special characters.
You can find the link and promo code in our show notes or PNW Haunts and Homicides link tree.
Have a safe ass day! Hi, Cassie.
Hi, Caitlin.
Hey, creepy people.
Hi.
Hi.
What's up? What's up?
This is PNW Haunts and Homicides.
Still is.
Yeah. Also still.
For now.
Yeah. It could be PNW Haunts and Homicides.
Humps.
Haunts. My haunts.
My humps are humps are humps.
We've
My
had
lovely
that.
lady love.
We've had that song stuck in our heads, I think.
So good. Who
Yeah.
did that? Who said that?
Oh, just, our friend Paul from Disturbingly Pragmatic.
Oh, have you guys heard of them?
They actually, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to it because I know you've been recovering,
Mm-hmm.
but they just had a pretty major guest on their show, actually.
Yeah.
The guy from Risk. And I listened to that and I was all shits and giggles.
It was
that
good.
was good.
It was funny. You know the funniest thing about that? So I am caught up. I did like a binge listen. Honestly, I've been binging Dave and Paul and I just feel like they're my besties just hanging out all the time because I'm all caught up on the newest and then I went back and I started from episode 1.
Did you?
Well, yeah, because Dave was always like, don't start an episode. Don't listen to that. So I had to go listen to it. So
Yeah,
they're
so
all good.
we're
Don't let them
listening to
fool
it.
you.
I know.
Even the first one is really good. I don't even know what they're talking about, but yeah, so I've been binging them. But the funniest part of that episode was I don't remember the Risk guy's name.
Kevin Allison.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Kev.
Our friend Kev.
So he was like, I'm a little bit stoned. I might be talking
Yes.
quiet or
Slow.
Yeah.
He was saying
Did I
slow.
say quiet?
Yeah.
Slow. And so I listen to stuff on, we've talked about it, 1.5 speed.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, they just sound really normal.
I listened at regular speed and I was like, I don't really notice it, but I haven't listened to a bunch of their podcast, the
yeah.
Risk podcast. So I don't know, what his normal cadence is, but I
Yeah.
didn't think it sounded weird either.
It didn't at all.
They had really so much fun and they had good chemistry between them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, no one was going to ruin that for me. I was living the dream.
Yeah, that's good. So if you haven't listened, go check it out. Maybe we'll link in the show notes.
We totes will.
Can we talk about one more funny thing before we get into the shitty thing that you're about to tell us?
I told her it's real bad this week, Chaos. It's
I don't
real
know
bad.
I don't know if you want to include this or not, but I really want to talk about Beetlejuice.
I love it,
yeah.
Why would I not want to talk about Beetlejuice?
This is the funniest thing, and I didn't put it together at all. And we had one of our amazing listeners who always messages us, or I always say messages. Does that make me sound old?
I don't know. I don't know what the kids are saying.
DM.
Yeah.
Anyway,
DM always has like a sexual connotation to me. I'm like, you message me. You don't DM me.
So this lovely person slides into our DMs all the time. And she said, when I posted the story about Pete Davidson looking like Beetlejuice before he died, and she said it's Beetlejuice. And I fucking, like, that gave me so much life. I've been sick. I've been like just not myself, and that made me so happy. So I just wanted to say that if you think of something funny, please fucking message us. Yeah, because we want to hear it.
Oh, but that's not where it ends, because we kept riffing on that. If you're not watching the stories, then you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But yeah, so then from there, I decided to be an 11-year-old. They said that Cassie's probably in love with Pete Davidson too, because she loves Beetlejuice.
Yeah. Well, I've always had a crush on both of them, honestly. Like,
oh, see, I called it.
It makes a lot of sense, honestly.
Cassie and Pete sitting in a tree.
Stop it. He has a girlfriend. Her name's Kim.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would mess with that, but my favorite though is that Beetlejuice, which in my head I was definitely saying, just so you get the full effect here, Pete Le Juice. It sounds like oh god.
Gosh.
It sounds like a marketing scheme by LaCroix. LaCroix.
Pete Le Juice.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Pete La Juice.
Yeah. That was the best day. Well, it was like yesterday.
You're like, dying. That was like yesterday.
So what happens if I Beetlejuice? Oh, he didn't come.
That's disappointing.
I really had high hopes for that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, since you're already feeling down, should I get into it?
All right. Fine. We've had enough fun.
Today, our case covers the crimes of a young man who would eventually be sentenced to 357 years behind bars.
Wow, that's a long time.
It sure is.
I didn't even know they could do that.
That is not even a third of some of the highest sentences out there on record.
Wow.
Yeah. There are some insane sentences, and you're like, okay, so this is largely symbolic?
I just never understood what's life in prison? Like, why don't they just do that? It confuses me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very confusing. There's a lot of confusing things.
Law is just confusing in general. Like,
it really is.
Unnecessarily. So I feel like they make it harder than it needs to be.
Yeah, definitely. But wouldn't it be nice if there was actually a way to enforce outlandish sentences like this for the worst of the worst violent criminals out there?
Like, you have to keep them alive for that long? Yes. That would be the ultimate punishment.
It really would be. Well, lucky for Kirby D. Anthony, that's not technology that exists today or is likely to in our lifetimes.
Darn.
Because he's one of the first that I would personally recommend for that kind of experimentation.
Ooh.
But let's start at the beginning to get a little bit of background, shall we? He was born 2 days before Christmas in 1963 in Twin Falls, Idaho. And right about now, all of Twin Falls, Idaho is like, seriously, what did we do to you? Please, what? No. His family life was less than ideal, to put it pretty mildly. His parents had a violent, abusive, and it probably goes without saying, tumultuous relationship. Kirby's father, Noah Anthony, was a truck driver with anger issues and an absentee father on the best of days. Peggy Anthony did her best to protect the kids when she could. Kirby would later reflect on his childhood with a social worker, recalling that his parents had separated or divorced several times when he was an adolescent.
Like, from each other?
Yes.
So they were like on again, off again?
Yeah.
But with like marriage and divorce?
That's what it sounds like.
What? Okay.
Yeah. In one particularly violent encounter, Peggy had apparently decided she'd had enough. She shot Noah in self-defense when he began kicking her after having fallen as a result of his angry assault. Her infraction, you ask? She had told him to lay off one of the kids.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. He then turned his attention towards her. When she fell, he didn't let up on the attack at all. She eventually struggled to crawl away from him and into the bedroom where there was a .38 special. And well, Noah took one in the hip.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's amazing, though, that she was able to get away and get to a gun. Like, he probably thought she would never do that.
Oh, I'm sure not. No.
Yeah.
He egged her on.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like one of those, shoot me, I dare you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. Though Kirby Anthony was the youngest of 5 children, he certainly wasted no time developing a record as a juvenile delinquent, much like his siblings. I know, I was shocked too.
So shocked.
Take, for example, the incident that took place in February of 1979, which led to him being charged with bombing a building.
What? I wasn't expecting that.
No, not exactly typical teenage stuff we're talking about here. But don't worry, it wasn't so much that he had actually made a bomb in the way that probably most of us are thinking of it. More like he tried to burn down the school using acetylene-filled balloons.
What?
Yeah. So I don't really know how that leads to a charge of bombing a building. Maybe that's just the closest.
Yeah, because it's more than just like lighting a fire.
Yeah.
He got creative with it, man.
Really did. I mean, casual. No big deal. He pled guilty, which extended his existing probation after serving 30 days in the Twin Falls juvenile facility. Kirby barely stayed out of trouble for 6 months. Thereafter, taking part in breaking and entering with friends on the 4th of July in 1980.
Wow.
So,
just, recreational fun.
Yeah. Just about 30 days later, in August of 1980, a report was produced regarding his stay in the juvenile facility, as well as his offenses and disposition up to that point. It stated that he rationalized, manipulated, and was impulsive. He was perceived as egocentric and suggestible, which is a very dangerous combination.
Suggestible.
Mm-hmm. He fell into the bright to normal intellectual range, but was a scholastic underachiever, which is basically the academic way of saying we're not mad, just disappointed, Kirby.
Oh.
Yeah. He had a lack of respect for authority and feelings of alienation, which might elicit a reaction that's akin to, welcome to being a teenager, dude.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a bit past that point. Just a tad.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just slightly.
Bombing buildings, it's fine.
Yeah, just a toe over the line, one might say.
Oh.
However, in the facility, he received counseling, attended group therapy, and AA meetings. He even got his GED and a mechanic certificate. It almost seems like that should have been a turning point in his life. But this would be a really short episode if that was the case.
Yeah.
Basically, this was the most productive period of his life up to this point, which seems pretty encouraging on the surface. But less encouraging is the fact that unless we're looking for awards for abusive substance consumption or number of crimes committed, it would also be the most productive period of his life thereafter as well.
Oh, no.
But perhaps based in part on these promising signs of progress and his developing maturity, he was considered a relatively low risk for recidivism.
What does that mean?
Based on their assessment, he was at a relatively low risk for reoffending.
Okay.
So they could not have gotten that more wrong.
So they were wrong.
Yes. So they were wrong.
I mean,
yeah.
they couldn't have known.
There were some signs.
Oh, no.
Around the time of his release was when he met Dina, who he would later come to consider his common-law wife. I'm only sharing her first name because even though it is included in the book that I used for researching this case, it's not widely available outside of that source, at least that I could find. And I'll be honest, I think she's probably been through enough in connection to this man and his horrific crimes. Not only that, but as I'm sure you can imagine, the cycle of abuse he had witnessed without addressing would become nearly impossible to avoid repeating in his own relationships. So I think she's probably had enough trauma related to this particular dude.
Yeah.
Now we're going to get into the crimes that landed Kirby his jaw-dropping sentence. But let me tell you about some that predate them. But honestly, they seem terrible enough to have landed him at least a chunk of that serious time. On January 6th of 1982, at 9 p.m., Kirby perpetrated an armed robbery against an elderly woman in a wheelchair.
Oh my, come on.
It gets so much worse. Though she lived alone, she clearly felt safe in her home, so it never occurred to her that something like this could happen when she answered her door.
Oh.
Unfortunately, it was Kirby waiting for her there. She was powerless to do anything to stop him as soon as he rang the doorbell. He brandished a gun because I'm sure that was totally necessary, right? Because she was obviously going to try to put up a fight. But don't worry. He continues to completely overdo it in terms of cruelty and show of physical force. He's literally the largest douche that ever douched.
Oh.
As if the gun wasn't enough to secure her immediate cooperation, he proceeded to tie her up and, brace yourself, mace her directly in the face.
Why? But why?
He's not a nice man.
He just wanted to inflict fear and...
I think so, honestly.
What a dick.
He also took the phone clean off the wall because blinding a disabled elderly woman wasn't already cruel enough. Thankfully, her son would be the one to discover her, and relatively quickly after, he became concerned because she wasn't answering her phone. The mace, as well as other trauma and injuries that were inflicted upon her, was said to have been enough that it could have killed a woman who was already vulnerable due to shock. Just 2 days later, Kirby Anthony was arrested. So fast you'd think it might actually give him whiplash.
So he didn't kill her?
He didn't, no, but I mean, he left her for dead without a way to call for help.
Yeah.
She was blinded, already somebody who's impacted by a lack of mobility. That's fucking cruel.
I can't even imagine. I am so shocked.
It's awful. For whatever reason, he tried to rope Dina in, his common-law wife, by saying he did it to pay her medical bills when he was already basically financially destitute.
Okay. So you can do that without macing and tying up. And
yeah.
Jeez.
My notes say, which don't rob little, elderly, disabled ladies in any scenario for any reason, but especially inflicting such brutality on her. And then try to say you did it for love, Kirby.
No.
Kirby would later admit that he had no shortage of other options to come up with the money. Critically, they were all options that didn't include hurting an innocent person. Right. What? I acknowledge. I understand. I know that we can't lock up every offender forever. And we shouldn't, obviously. But maybe just at least the ones that terrorize helpless little old ladies and sweet, vulnerable children.
Yeah.
So, but that brings me to another important point. Because, that's right, before we get to what led to his outlandish sentence, there's another truly terrible crime. And this one involves a child. So you can skip ahead if you don't want to hear about that, but it's going to come back up. So be just forewarned that if it's a particular tender topic for you, that this might be a tough episode for you to continue with, period.
Okay. Earplugs going in.
Yeah. So this one takes place in July of 1985. 3 years and 3 days before the birth of this lovely co-host. I actually have nothing to do with this case as evidenced by my unborn status, but the numbers and dates involved in some of the cases that I've been looking at have been really presenting some weird patterns recently.
Oh, interesting.
My next one after this too.
Huh.
And I was going to do something different after this. And then I changed my mind, started looking into it, and I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Weird.
Yeah. So we'll talk about it more after our next true crime case. But the number 3 is just popping up everywhere for me in my research lately.
It's a good number.
Yeah. Numbers 3 and 5. Huh. They're just going to... But I digress because I'm trying to give us a breath before we dive into this next one, I think. Honestly, these two are awful enough without even knowing about the crimes that put him away for good. But here we go. Michelle was a 12-year-old girl who was beaten, raped, and strangled. Her battered body was found near a river in a popular recreational area where she had been left for dead. Oh. Pure coincidence, I'm sure. But Kirby Anthony happened to be there that same day.
Weird.
I know. A very short time before her body was discovered. And he hadn't just been at the same park close to that time. That'd be weird enough. He was right where she was found, clinging to life.
Oh my God.
A short time later, police would be able to question her at the hospital.
Wow.
You guys, Michelle lives. I mean, by the skin of her teeth.
Oh my gosh. At least there's that. I mean, ugh. That's so awful. She was 12.
12.
A baby.
Mm-hmm. Given that it was the mid-1980s, you might think that they wouldn't have recovered much from the scene. But then you don't know Kirby very well yet either. But a pair of flip-flops had been found. Wouldn't you know, it would turn out that these very flip-flops were the very same ones that Kirby had borrowed from a friend, but he left them down by the water. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Who just borrows somebody's flip-flops?
Well, I guess he didn't have any, so he borrowed a pair.
He didn't have his murder shoes. He had to borrow some.
I guess. Kirby's friend even positively identified hey, yeah, those are my flip-flops. Kirby borrowed those. Unfortunately, this would be the only evidence against him that police would be able to locate. His girlfriend at the time witnessed him not only willfully deceive the police, but also withhold evidence. She didn't speak up at the time. Sadly, the victim, Michelle, was also left blinded in one eye and deaf in one ear from brutal blows to the head during the violent sexual attack. So, sort of blessing and a curse, at least that also meant that she had no memory of it.
Oh my goodness.
So she could not identify her attacker.
Oh, how awful.
Yeah.
Because you could look at anybody on the street and be like, was that the guy? Like,
exactly.
For your whole life.
Yeah. Kirby assured police that he was innocent, but then abruptly decided to leave for Alaska.
I'm innocent, but I'm going to move. It'll be fine.
I'm going to go. His mother was aware that he was the primary suspect before Kirby left for Alaska. But she didn't share that information with any of their relatives that had previously relocated to that area.
Oh. Wow. So his family didn't even know.
Nope. It would prove a fatal mistake that would ultimately tear the entire family apart. Anchorage, Alaska, where the Newmans would establish a new family home, would become the scene of arguably one of the most gruesome crimes I've heard of, even out of Alaska.
Oh.
Kirby Anthony moved up to Anchorage, Alaska, and even though they hadn't been fully warned about him, it seems like his own family, the Newmans, didn't trust him. He wasn't given a key during his short tenure in their small home with his girlfriend at the time, so he could only be there to essentially sleep and whenever they were around. It's so sad that clearly even those that didn't have the full story knew that something wasn't quite right with this guy. Even his own family, who might have had, probably a little bit more of a natural inclination to trust him.
Yeah, that's crazy.
On the morning of Sunday, March 15th, 1987, at around 8 a.m., a series of events had begun to unfold that, for Paul and Cheryl Chapman, would change their lives irrevocably. Cheryl and Paul drove to her sister's home after getting a worrisome call from a concerned Mama Somerville at Gwenny's restaurant.
Aw,
I know.
Sounds cute.
It sounds so wholesome.
I just want to latch onto that and live there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both Cheryl and her sister Nancy Newman waitressed there. Nancy also worked at H&R Block, but she was truly beloved by the staff and the regulars at the restaurant.
Aww.
Nancy's car had sat in the lot since Friday night, and at the early morning hour of the call was already 2 hours late for work. That would be red flag enough for sure, because this definitely wasn't typical behavior for Nancy. But Cheryl also knew that Nancy's husband was out of town. So Nancy was holding down the fort and caring for their 2 children on her own. Of course, Cheryl would immediately be concerned that something was wrong, but I'm sure she pictured, hopefully, something like one of the young girls being sick.
Yeah.
Still, Cheryl was not playing around.
Good.
Yeah. Cheryl is not the fuck around and find out type.
Good.
She's just finding out. We've got another promo roll that we are really excited to share today.
Hey everyone, my name is Natalie Katona, and I am the host and creator of To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. Each week, my guests and I take a portion of our lives or a past relationship and discuss how the patriarchy, misogyny, and other oppressive systems came into play when we were living through that time in our life. There is some comedic debriefing, soul-searching, and manifesting for a better future in every episode. Smiles are for joy, not tolerating, and we'd love for you to join us in all of our joy on Team Tolerator. To All the Men I've Tolerated Before can be found wherever you find podcasts.
You guys, we're back! No one had been able to reach Nancy, so she was on her way within minutes. So quickly, in fact, that while they had grabbed a Pepsi from the fridge and her cigarettes, Paul's were left behind in their home. Cheryl had keys to the Newman home, but Paul had to unlock the door on arrival. By the time they got there, Cheryl was shaking so badly for fear of what might have happened to her sister and nieces. Talk about intuition. Despite her overwhelming fear, I don't think that she anticipated anything quite as horrific as the reality. When they entered the Newman family home, Cheryl called out to Nancy and the girls, but was greeted by silence. Nancy's cookie jar with tip money was sitting open and empty in the center of the kitchen table, but the house appeared undisturbed otherwise. Still, just to be safe, Cheryl would wait there at the table while Paul checked out each of the other rooms in the home. Clearly, they knew to be prepared for the worst, including an intruder in the home, while they were obviously hoping for the best. 8-year-old Melissa's room was the first that he checked, then proceeding on to find their mother and his sister's wife, Nancy, and lastly, 3-year-old Angie. Paul quickly returned to the kitchen to warn his wife, Cheryl, "Don't go down the hall. They're all dead." Of course, she reacted in a manner that I think a lot of people likely would, letting out a scream and struggling to get past him. He fought to keep her from heading down the hall and actually managed to get her back outside, but also on the way out the door, grabbing the landline on the way so that he could dial 911. This guy is fucking on it.
Yeah, I was literally thinking that.
Yeah.
He's on it.
Yeah. And this is exactly what I would want someone to do for me, especially as a partner.
Yeah.
In this moment, unarguably, one of the worst moments that any of us can experience in life, period. Something probably most of us fear. He knew that she'd be in shock and absolutely devastated.
Yeah.
And she did not know any of the circumstances of the crime yet. Probably without even fully realizing it, he did the best thing that he could have to try to spare her whatever horror he could for the time. But perhaps just as important, this was also an important step because it preserved the crime scene and any related evidence.
Yeah. I was going to say that, and I was like, she's going to say it.
Well, I mean, how many times do you hear that someone immediately wants to go to their loved one and, you want to throw your arms around their lifeless body? Aww. That impulse seems natural to a lot of people because, of course, you're reeling from the loss while simultaneously maybe angry and probably totally fucking confused by the unexpected circumstances. I mean,
I'm sure even seeing that, like, you're not even processing what you're seeing, and then you're going to process it later and wish you hadn't seen it.
Yeah. Recall that Cheryl had remembered to grab her cigarettes when they left the house, but unforeseen circumstances would soon see her parted ways with them unexpectedly and indefinitely. But alas, though her pack would be just out of reach within what was now a crime scene, and her husband had neglected to bring his along, the Chapmans would smoke nearly half a pack of another brand as they struggled to cope with the early morning events of that fateful Sunday, though we can hardly imagine that they cared about the brand at this point.
Yeah. No.
Wayne Vance was to be the first law enforcement officer to respond to the scene. Upon his arrival, he would clear the home per police protocol to be sure that the perpetrator was not still in the home, lying in wait, hidden from the relatives that had initially entered. He quickly verified that no unknown assailant remained in the home and would discover the same gory scene that Paul had just a short time earlier. Officer Vance quickly exited the apartment as well. Immediately upon his arrival, he had placed a request for backup at the Ide Street home. His fellow officers would be quick to respond to the crime scene as well to aid in the developing investigation into the vicious homicides. EMS workers in blaring ambulances and fire trucks, however, would win out over the additional law enforcement in the race to the home. Quickly converging upon the scene, being carefully guarded by the single officer. Oh, so sad. While their insistence upon entering the home to provide emergency medical services was certainly understandable, even admirable, sadly their efforts would languish outside the front door of the residence. It was the policy of the Anchorage Police Department that in the instance of unmistakable evidence of death, that EMS or anyone else be barred from entering an active crime scene in order to preserve any and all evidence. It seems sort of cruel, and I wrestled with the kind of potential ethical pitfalls of not at least admitting the EMS workers in other types of scenarios. I mean, but Paul was immediately positive that Nancy and her daughters, Melissa and Angie, were dead. So now it would be imperative to preserve the scene and any evidence.
Man.
Just fucking sucks.
I can't even imagine what that would look like to just be sure that there's no way they're alive.
Officer Paul Schwartz was the first to arrive as a requested backup and would do his very best to corral the Chapmans in his patrol car. That did not entirely work. After witnessing the brutalized bodies, Paul could not bear to sit still in a closely confined space. Finding himself nauseated and in dire need of a cigarette as he restlessly moved about the parking lot outside. Lucky for the Chapmans, backup also brought their own stash of cigarettes. Greg Baker from the robbery division also responded shortly thereafter. He was the only detective working on that Sunday. He drew the short straw on this one, for sure.
Damn.
But there were going to be a lot of people involved in this investigation. Ken Spadafora was the second detective to respond. He was a member of Anchorage's elite homicide response team. So he's definitely one of the guys that should be there, which is great. But now I have the SVU theme music and the show leading mantra playing on a loop in my head. So he described the scene as a nightmare at the end of the hallway.
Oh, God.
He would seal the apartment until his superior, Mike Grimes, arrived, swearing to everyone on the scene he would find the person responsible for the triple homicide. Mike Grimes reflected that after his initial review of the crime scene, he was jolted by the reaction of just how much Melissa looked like his own daughter.
Oh, that is so fucked up and sad.
I know. He was concerned about the toll that working this case would take on all of those involved in the investigation, as well as those that it would come to touch in so many varying degrees already. He highly encouraged anyone who felt this investigation might be too overwhelming to participate in to inform him immediately. Smart man, because it was going to be absolutely brutal. Each room in the home just seemingly revealing a more appalling scene. It was like a pattern of escalation laid out in one crime scene. And it started real bad. All right, you guys, I'm going to give you a tour through the scene.
Okay.
As a reminder, this case involves both children and sexual violence. So, this is your last warning. Mike Grimes assigned 2 teams of detectives to the investigation, one team to specifically work on developing leads and suspects. Bill Reeder was assigned to this team. He was an easygoing detective experienced in investigating sex crimes against children, which the fact that anyone is experienced in that particular line of work is just enough to make me lose my lunch.
God, thank God someone does it though. Like,
I know. I can't even imagine the toll that takes on some of these people though. He was paired with the more aggressive Ken Spadafora. The two were already good friends, actually, and their contrasting personalities and strengths made them an ideal match to work together on this case. Another team was assigned to work the crime scene and the forensic evidence. Sergeant Bill Gifford and his team worked diligently to collect evidence from the victims' bodies as well as the gruesome scene that had been discovered in the Newman home. Mike Probst was the pathologist assigned to work with Gifford's team. These are his observations at the scene. Melissa's room was the first as he entered the hallway leading to the bedrooms. She was on her back, legs splayed, and a pillowcase tied around her neck. Further examination of her body revealed that she had been very forcefully raped. His findings were that this was done by use of a foreign object.
Oh my God.
Nancy, this is the mom, was half naked in the second room of the home. She had died from strangulation. She was similarly posed in a very graphic and sexualized manner with a pillowcase tied tightly around her neck as well. Both Nancy and Melissa were found with identical pillowcases. Her face had also been struck by a blunt object. Both fecal matter and blood were found on the bed sheets in her room where she had been sexually assaulted as well.
Oh.
Okay, deep breath. You're going to want to do it too. Finally, in the third bedroom was 3-year-old Angie. Unfortunately, just like her mother and sister, her lifeless little body was found posed in a similar sexualized manner. She had a compound cut made by 4 separate slashes to her neck by a sharp instrument, her throat having been slit or cut from ear to ear.
Oh my God.
Her body and nightclothes were covered in blood and many defense wounds and cuts.
Oh, she's just a baby, like a literal baby.
Further examination led to the disturbing realization that she had also been sodomized. This was confirmed in part by argon laser light examination that indicated semen was present not just there, but also in the area of her brutalized neck.
Oh my God. What the fuck?
She died of blood loss. I can't think of anything more awful than a 3-year-old dying like this.
Oh. It's just like, what the fuck?
I know. It's just like, it's like you don't even know what to say.
No, I might leave in that long ass silence.
Yeah. I was like, I'm like, this feels awkward, but also
I feel like the people listening might need a minute of silence as well.
Yeah.
Jesus. It just doesn't comprehend in the brain.
It would be bad enough if this was a stranger.
Yeah. You fucking knew this little girl.
Mm-hmm.
You were related.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take a very, very hot shower.
With a wire scrub brush.
Yeah.
The husband and father was devastated. He returned back to his hometown in Idaho following their brutal murders. Obviously, he was heartbroken. His life was absolutely shattered, and he never did have the heart to view the bodies, which is almost certainly for the better.
Yeah. Don't do it. You don't need to.
Yeah. You don't want to do that to your psyche. He would return to Alaska for the trial of the individual that murdered his family. In the meantime, the timeline and evidence was coming together to present investigators with a picture of the last hours of Nancy, Melissa, and Angie Newman. Shanaz Dalton, a former Seattle native, was one of the last people to see them alive when she served the Chapmans and the Newmans at Gwenny's during her shift the evening of March 13th. She would also be called in when Nancy didn't make it to work on Sunday and no one could reach the Newman family. That's prior to the Chapmans entering the home and finding their bodies. Time of death was narrowed to sometime between midnight Friday and 10 a.m. Saturday after the autopsies were performed. So that's pretty important information. I mean, sometimes we're not going to be able to narrow it down that much as far as time of death, but it turns out to be pretty important. The Chapmans had spent Friday evening with Nancy while her daughters were taken swimming by their older cousin Kelly, Cheryl's daughter from a previous marriage. This was a really tight-knit family, the Chapmans and the Newmans. In fact, Nancy had borrowed her sister's vacuum in anticipation of her husband's long-awaited return home. The Newmans' home had a central vac system, but Nancy kept a very clean home, so she preferred using a push vacuum. In the sink, the morning the Newmans' bodies were found, were 2 cereal bowls. There was also a coffee cup on the kitchen table and a mere handful of cigarette butts in the ashtray. It was as if their lives were cruelly cut short before Nancy could perform the normal cleaning routine that would have been typical. Unfortunately, we're also going to be cut a bit short here because we're going to have to wait to get into more of the details of the forensic evidence and the trial. But I think we've all probably absorbed a decent share of the darkness that Kirby Anthony cruelly wrought on this family for one day. It's kind of wild because this is before you and I were born, and you don't think of forensic evidence and specifically DNA evidence playing a big role in a case like this during that era. But people did some shit right on this, and it didn't go perfect, and the trial was ugly. But they bent over backwards to make sure that they had what they needed to make the case.
Good.
And I can't really say more than that without getting into the details of all of that. It's wild. You will not be uncertain about Kirby Anthony's guilt at the end of this.
Well, good. Since he got that sentence, I mean, I hope that they're sure.
Yeah. Like I said, if we could keep him alive for all of those 357 years, I'd fucking do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So tarot?
Tarot?
Fuck.
What are we going to get from the tarot?
Oh, who knows?
Okay. So we're thinking about this terribleness of a case that Caitlin decided to present us with. Let's get some insight into the shitball.
Is that really what you want?
It's what we're asking for. I don't know.
Cassie.
Holy shit.
Show that to the creepy people.
Holy
Patreon.
shit.
I'm trying to look
the
in
devil.
Ah! Okay.
Okay.
The devil in reverse.
Do we even need to read the description?
Well, it's just like the death card. Wow. It doesn't necessarily, it's not literal.
No, but.
Although I feel like in this case, if it were. Yeah. Wow. Oh, dear.
They've got chains around their necks. And that
wow,
gives me all of the heebie-jeebies.
Okay, I don't like that.
Wow.
I don't like it that much.
Side note, I really like the devil card. I think it's super fucking cool. But in this instance, I don't like it.
Yeah. So the devil card, our keywords are obsession, indulgence, fear, materialism, egotism. Many decks picture a medieval Christian-type devil, complete with horns, hooves, a hairy tail, and a pitchfork. The Rider-Waite-Smith deck shows two small human-like figures at the devil's feet, one male and one female, with chains around their necks that represent bondage to the material realm. Notice the chains are loose, though, and the people could easily slip them off, suggesting this card is about self-imposed limitations. When you think of the devil, what comes to your mind? Consummate evil? A mythical creature? A symbol of human indulgence? Ignorance? Egotism? Greed? And irresponsibility? Remember, egotism is literally a word that they use to describe Kirby.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Like
egocentric, I should say.
Oh my God.
I think of the devil as the obsession card. And there is a extra excerpt here, as if that was necessary. The devil appears to be one of the more alarming cards of the major arcana. However, he does not represent satanic forces or evil. That goatish guy is paganism's horned god Pan, connected to the fertility rites banned by the Christian Church. Therefore, his appearance can indicate a sexual component to your question or concern.
Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
In the Thought Tarot, Crowley's devil is clearly phallic. I could live without that. Oh, there's another quote here. The beast is always the dark face of the handsome prince.
Oh. Was Kirby handsome?
He wasn't one of your, stereotypical monstrous looking serial killers. He's one of those ones that, he deceives you a little bit. I wouldn't go so far as to say he was attractive, but.
Yeah. But still, we could kind of see where he doesn't look like a literal monster.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Continuing on with the trend of being totally right fucking on. Reversed, the devil indicates you feel trapped in a situation over which you think you have no control. You may believe your options are limited or blame someone else for your problems, which is 1,001% Kirby.
My girlfriend needed money.
Yeah. But if you're honest with yourself, you'll see your own ideas and fears are causing the problem. Be careful of a quick fix. You probably need to do some serious work, both inner and outer, to solve the issues and move to a better place.
Oh, weird. He'd move, but he didn't fix no issues.
I hate this so much. In a reading about money, the reversed devil suggests greed may cause you to engage in unethical practices or profit at other people's expense.
He did take the money from the cookie jar, too.
Oh, we'll get into the money from the cookie jar, don't you worry. Remember the saying, love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Sometimes this card means someone else owns you, due to indebtedness or your lust for money. If the reading is about your job, you may be a wage slave, prostituting yourself, afraid to break free.
Wow.
Perhaps you engage in self-destructive practices, working so hard you damage your health or allowing your employer to take advantage of you. The reverse devil can also mean working for a corrupt organization or in a shady activity. There it is.
Yeah. I feel like he is the corrupt, shady shit. He's working for himself. He's self-employed.
Self-employed, yeah. In a reading about love, your self-esteem may be compromised by a relationship in which you're devalued. This card speaks of codependence, manipulation, delusion, and deception. Don't walk away. Run.
Holy shit.
Which is literally any relationship that anyone has had with Kirby.
Yeah.
We probably won't really be able to get to everyone, but it's gnarly.
He fucked up a lot of people's lives.
Sure did.
Wow. Well, the devil card was very fitting.
Yeah. The devil in reverse.
I just the naked people on here that are chained up. It was described differently on like the meaning of it but like just when you look at it, two naked women chained around their necks.
Wow.
How are we so dead on, man? I want to thank the universe and I want to thank the cards. Are we going to look up something else? Well, I'm being thankful to the readings that we get from the fabulous deck.
We might have to take some time to look into numerology.
Yeah, it's been a thing. Is it what's on it? A 2? Wait. That's not a 2. I am blind as a bat.
No, this is in terms of the order with the major arcana, the devil is 15 and their bodies were discovered on the 15th.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So weird.
I'm glad you realized that.
Yeah, I don't know why, but for a second I was like, wait a second, isn't there something? And here's the thing, the numbers that keep repeating themselves over and over and over again, 3 and 5.
3 times 5 is 15. I can do math.
Ladies and gentlemen, she knows her times tables.
I know the easy ones.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
I don't know why, because at first I was like, oh, weird, like 3 in this, 3 in that, you know.
Yeah.
And then here's the really weird part. There's a couple of cases where recent research that I've been doing where I'm reading about the event in 2022 on the day it occurred decades prior. It's happened a couple of times in the last 2 weeks.
Wow. I think that just is saying you're on the right track. That's one of those things that what do people call synchronicity?
Yeah.
It's a thing.
It's freaking me out.
I know. We ask for it, but it freaks us out. Well, tell us what you think if you notice anything else. Same with all of the other ones. Like, since the beginning, you know, we've pulled cards and stuff, and you know, we're getting better at it. We're learning more. We're you know, listening to other things, reading about tarot. We're trying to get better at it. We're practicing all the time. I mean, the number is something we might not have noticed like in the past.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If anyone ever notices anything from, you know, like a past episode, don't hesitate. Yeah, don't hesitate to bring it up because it's still pretty cool. And I think one of my goals, at least, is to go back someday and like go back and re-look at the cards that we've pulled and see if we can, you know, gain any more insight into.
Yeah. I mean, part of that was, except on the dates where the last time that we were recording where I just made a holy hell of a mess out of that page in the notebook. But just recording with the stickers and with, some different notes that we take over time, some of the patterns and things that we're noticing. I feel like, I noticed a couple more in this episode reading it for the recording.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you going to share?
I'm not going to pull up my notes and go back to it, but I might. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about it next time because I think we've got some more coming up where we're going to have some sort of recurring numbers and patterns and things. So there's some weird stuff. There's, I don't know if you call it like synchronicity with all of it or what the term is. We'll get there. It's going to be, there's some interesting things. I'm just seeing some patterns.
Ooh.
All right.
Have a creepy ass day.
See you next Tuesday.
I was going to say not you, Kirby, but we actually will be seeing you again. So
yeah.
Just kidding.
Well, actually, you don't have to look at him.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
I'll be seeing him in my mind's eye.
Ugh.
Ugh. Ugh, I don't want him in there. Get him out. Get him out.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
So for all of you that are listening, if you have any true crime or paranormal stories that you want us to share, maybe with the whole Pacific Northwest.
Yes, we would love to read them on the pod.
Yes, we will read them out loud.
Not just in our heads.
Yes. They don't have to be from the Pacific Northwest if you would like to share. Email us at pnwhauntsandhomicides@gmail.com. It's all spelled out, no special characters. Super duper easy peasy.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Same thing as the email at pnwhauntsandhomicides, all spelled out, no special characters. Please also rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening to and check out our stories on social media because our meme game is hot.
Agreed.
And if you agree, like Caitlin, you can also find us on Patreon and support the show.
Bitchin'.
Just looks like, oh, he's gonna come live with us down in Alaska. Down, over, up. Up in Alaska.
You're gonna have to cut that part because it's not gonna transition well with my next line.
It's fine. That was just me being an idiot. I usually cut those out.